and welcome to a special edition of Preemie Chats. If you haven't guessed already, this is our special World Prematurity Day event. My name is Jenna Morton. I'm one of your regular co-hosts for Preemie Chats, and I am thrilled to have a special guest joining me today. Hello, Jack.
Hello, Jenna. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to celebrate World Prematurity Day. I don't just dress in purple every day, but I should. You know what I'm saying? So
it's a good color. It looks good on you.
You as well. I am so excited to be here and be part of the Canadian Premature Baby Foundation's wonderful World Prematurity Day celebrations. So thank you for having me. I am a NICU parent just like Jenna over here. My daughter Tess was born at 27 weeks at Mount Sinai. And now I do a lot of other things, including talk and things in my job.
Very similar. Yes. Yeah. So I have 3 NICU grads. Our daughter was only there for about 24 to 48 hours, but that was a good little teaser for us for when we had our boys who were born at 32 weeks and spent 35 days in the NICU here in Moncton, New Brunswick, which is where I'm coming from, just outside in the community of Salisbury. And I'm so excited. We have guests from around the world joining us as part of our live event today, Jack. And we also have, hopefully, guests joining us around the world watching. And we want to make sure that we know where you are and what you're up to. So please take a moment and let us know in the comments where you're watching from, where you're joining from today. And just for those of you who might be here for the first time and wondering what exactly is Preemie Chats and what are we talking about here, Preemie Chats is a creation of the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, which is also known as CPBF. You can see our logo there behind us and the website on the screen, canadianpreemies.org. The foundation is a parent-led charitable organization that helps families during and after their NICU journey with education, support, and advocacy.
Indeed. Now, Jenna mentioned before that people are joining from all around the world and all around Canada. So it is very important that we acknowledge each other in this time. And we also acknowledge that with our hearts and minds that the Indigenous people that are traditional guardians of this land that we call Canada. And it is on which we gather here today for World Prematurity Day celebrations this week. We acknowledge the historical oppression of lands, cultures, and original peoples of this country. And we know we all have a role to play in the path of decolonization that we share together. So we recognize our duty to fight for Indigenous rights to be restored and commit ourselves to the journey of healing ahead. We thank more than the 630 First Nations, their peoples and ancestors who have taken care of these lands that we share. So let's take a short pause right now so that everyone can reflect on their own acknowledgement and the relationship to the land and be grateful for the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors have taken care of these lands for centuries.
Thank you for that, Jack. A little bit of backstory on prematurity for you before we dive into our special guests. I want to acknowledge that 1 in 10 babies are born early every year in this world. And here in Canada, Stats Canada released data recently that shows premature birth is actually on the rise in Canada. In 2023, Canada had the highest number of preterm births in the past 50 years. At 8.3%. Those of us who have been through it know very well that prematurity carries stress on families as well as the healthcare system itself. With approximately 32,000 babies born early in Canada each year, prematurity remains the leading cause of childhood disability and death before the age of 5 in Canada. In recent years, we have seen tremendous advancement in this relatively new field. And with advanced care, more and more babies born as early as 22 weeks in Canada are surviving. The work here, though, is far from over. In Canada alone, roughly 15,000 preterm infants each year are born with special health care or developmental needs. And prematurity costs the Canadian healthcare system in excess of $8 billion annually.
It for sure is a huge financial burden. It is also a burden on mental health and physical health as well. We will be talking about mental health later in the podcast and getting into some wonderful discussions about that and some resources. But an interesting little bit of information here, more than between 40 and 50% of people who have gone through premature birth, giving birth families suffer from anxiety, depression, and trauma. So these are real concerns that need to be addressed. And the Canadian Premature Baby Foundation is a charitable organization. It's parent-led, but we need help to help these people and continue these amazing programs that are helping NICU families after the NICU. So there are many of these programs, and we need your help and your support financially as well, if you can and you're able to donate to the foundation to keep these programs going for all of these wonderful families. I really needed it, and I'm sure Jenna did as well, right?
Yes, it's very touching for me to be able to take part in things like this to try to give back to the community that gave us so much support. And one of the things that really made a huge difference, I know for myself and my husband, and I know for most other parents I talk to, is being able to meet and talk with other parents who had gone through, something similar in this situation of having to deal with prematurity in the NICU. And if you have the ability to donate $50 to the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, that will sponsor a family for a session of our free weekly peer support group. And so I know sometimes it's really important when people can put that kind of dollar figure with the tangible items. So $50 is a session of peer support counseling for a family. If you can give a little bit more, $75, you might get a little gift in the mail when that's an option again. But no amount is too small to make a big impact. If you're able to give something, please do. If you cannot give financially, you can give of your time, and you can take a moment right now to, hit the share button and tell someone else about what we're doing here. It really, really does make a difference. CPBF really relies heavily on individual donations from people like you to continue work like this.
And speaking of funding and donations, we'd like to thank our amazing sponsors for helping us today and sponsoring this unprecedented chat. Is that what we're calling it, Jenna?
Sure. That's the hot word these days, right?
Yes, it's amazing. It really is. We've got some wonderful speakers and great information to share. But we'd like to thank AstraZeneca and Medela and for their wonderful support in collaboration with the Canadian Preterm Birth Network, the Canadian Neonatal Network, the Canadian Neonatal Follow-Up Network, the Family Integrated Care Program, which I was a part of back in the day. I changed my life. Canadian Neonatal Nurses Association, shout out to them, and to the EFCNI, and we will be talking to Silka later, who is from that organization across the world. So thank you to all of you for your financial and other support. We cannot do these wonderful chats without you. Thank you for that.
And for anyone wondering how they can get involved with World Prematurity Day in maybe a bit more concrete way, there are lots of events that are happening across Canada. You can find some details on those on our website as well. You can wear purple to raise awareness. I really love that we're doing this on Friday when World Prematurity Day technically is November 17th, which is Sunday. So if you're seeing this, you have lots of time to pull out the purple, to get involved, take a photo in front of the monuments that are going to be lighting up purple around the world over the next few days. And, if you can, take a photo of the preemie in your life and share it on social media with a story. I know that Jack is very much waiting to see all the pictures of the little babies, even the ones that have grown up now.
Yes, I want big, little, and in between. I want pictures of them all. I want their names. I want to know everything about what they're doing now and what they love to do. So please share those if you can on social media, or just send them to me in the chat if you can. I want to know their names and all their fun stuff that they're up to. 110 countries around the world are celebrating World Prematurity Day. It is the 16th year, which means it's not that old. It's like a teenager who's just learning to drive. So monuments will again be lit up around the world. And the kind of cool thing that's happening this year, one monument in every province will be illuminated between the 14th and the 16th, I believe, or 15th, 17th, 18th. Anyway, this week, people, and the big day on the 17th. So look for those, take those pictures, as Jenna said, dress in purple. You've got time to go to Walmart and pick up some purple stuff and paint your faces and things like that. But the more you get the word out there, the more these young babies get the support they need, as do the families. So with that, what are we doing next, Jenna?
Well, I'm going to give just kind of a little brief overview of what to expect throughout this whole live, and then we're going to get into the meat of it with our guests. We have an incredible program lined up to discuss prematurity from a variety of viewpoints. First, we're going to hear from Silke Meder, chairwoman of EFCNI, who, is part of that started all of this. She'll kind of talk about this year's theme and set the tone. We have some healthcare professionals. We're going to speak about prenatal care, midwifery, equity and inclusion, racial bias in healthcare. International Women's Health Advocate Nawi Moss is going to join us. She's going to talk about how we ensure women with chronic diseases are equipped to make shared decisions about their treatment before, during, and after pregnancy. And Jack, you're going to wrap up our day today with a very inspirational discussion with Petra James, who has mothered 8 children, including a preemie born at 28 weeks, who spent 115 days in the NICU.
She knows a lot about nurturing and care. So we'll be talking about that as well. So you do not want to miss it. Stick around to the very end of this lineup. What a great lineup that is, Jenna. It's something.
Fantastic. It is wonderful. And I am so excited for us to jump right here. And we're going to bring Silke on just after this short video we have for everyone.
Fantastic. Hello and welcome. We are so excited for our first guest. You are joining us live from Germany. I don't know what time it is there, but Silke Meder is one of the founding members of the EFCNI, and you have been an advocate and author and amazing human with all things prematurity for the last 25 years. So we can't wait to get into it with you and learn everything about this year's theme, access to quality care everywhere. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jack. Yes, for me here in Munich, I'm being here in Munich. And as you see, it's dark already here. So it's evening. And I'm happy to be here and discuss and share with you why we have chosen this year the topic of access of quality care everywhere. What is behind this topic?
Yeah, so tell us more about that. Why did you choose that? And what does it mean to you?
Yeah, we choose this topic this year because, as we all know, prematurity is not only a topic which only belongs to the NICU. So when the babies are born and staying a long time in the NICU, when you, all of us who are for sure joining today, know that it is already a topic before. So that means, what can we do to prevent? What kind of quality care we can ensure for women who have a risk pregnancy, to provide the right care to prevent preterm birth, but also to maybe prolong a preterm birth. Like in my case, it was if my preeclampsia would have been diagnosed earlier and I would have the best treatment in advance and of course, a healthcare professional who would diagnose this earlier, my pregnancy could maybe be prolonged, and my preemies would not have been born in week 25 with 290 and 515 grams 27 years ago. And when the babies are born preterm, they should have the best care, so the best quality care what they can get. And so there is a lot of things what needs to be done. So on the one hand, of course, to have a hospital who have qualified experts, who have the right equipment, who are enough people to take care of the children, and to ensure that these babies really can not only survive, but also can thrive later. And when we have children like myself, my son is 27 years old, we know that also the discharge management, going home, and especially the first years of life are important to provide, again, the best quality care we can have. And the reality is across the world that this is not the case, especially in our richer country like Canada, or also Germany has, of course, a lot of support for families. But as you have mentioned before, there are families where they are struggling to get access to the right care, who have challenges because they come from indigent background, or from social disadvantaged families, or like in our case at the moment in Europe, we have a lot of refugees. How can we ensure that they also have access to quality care? And so therefore we thought this year is a year where we really have the whole umbrella of quality care, from healthy pregnancy or getting the right place to be born until the time in the NICU, and a good follow-up and discharge management really lifelong. And what we wanted to have this year, that every country or every hospital even have the choice to take out what for them is really the most important. We know that, for example, in Brazil, they are talking a lot about prevention. We in Germany, we are talking a lot about the best care of family-centered care, to have the families really 24/7 in the NICUs and having rebuildings of hospitals. And in other countries, they have different topics. So we really wanted to have this year clear, that everyone can choose what their needs are in their country. And quality care as an umbrella is really in every single stage the most important issue, to have this baby in the best care, but also to not only let them survive, so to really let them thrive and having a happy and hopefully healthy life.
Well, I love that it is an umbrella, and everybody gets to pick what they want to keep under that umbrella or focus on. I'm just switching something over here. When you were leaving with, and you mentioned your son, what is your son's name?
So my son was born 25 weeks plus 1, and he was is a surviving twin. So I had a preeclampsia, a HELP syndrome, and was resuscitated myself, 3 days lying on intensive care unit. And to my husband, the doctor said, well, honestly, we don't know if one of the 3 will survive. And then they let them stand in front of the delivery room, and he was lying the whole night in front of this door and waiting if one of us will survive. And our daughter Lena was not surviving, and Lucas survived. And I also, after 3 days, was clear that I will survive. And I was very young. I was 25 years old. And so I thought always I'm healthy. So I had not the right care or quality care already in the pregnancy. And what was really the challenge for us when Lena died, there was no support for breastfeeding, for example. There was no support for us parents, no psychological support. We had visiting hours of 3 hours a day. And when it was, for example, my husband works in a children's home, so he worked in shifts. So sometimes he had 3 weeks, no time to really see his son, because it was not in this visiting time of 3 hours in the afternoon. And we really struggled, and it was extremely painful, especially when it came home. When we came home, we had no information. Can you just imagine today, internet didn't exist, so you had no access to information. And even in the time afterwards, getting appointments or bringing Lucas in a kindergarten or in a regular school, that was really challenging. And what we really want with this quality care, really also talk about the challenges parents face after discharge. It starts with paying for therapies, getting appointments, getting the right appointments, finding the right doctors, and what happens later in life. Because my son is 27 years old. He starts very soon his PhD. Yes,
Wow.
really great.
People listening, that is incredible. What's he doing his PhD in, by the way?
Yes, but when you are in the situation when he was 6 years old, the school was not prepared for having a child who is not proper walking. He was as because with a PhD you have to be very clever, but it was not seen as he would be clever. He had a cerebral palsy, so he was disabled, so he has to go in the school for disabled children, and that was really throughout the whole time frame in the school. And we were in the back and we're fighting for our rights, but not every child has a family or has a mom who is like a lion standing behind and always fighting for the right of the child. And even when you're not born in a country where you have this kind of resources anyway. And that is why we are thinking it's very important to talk about long-term outcome and good quality care for children later on, because our son would for sure not be in this level at the moment of waiting for his PhD start when he would not have parents like us, and also not living maybe in a country like Germany or Munich. And that's not everywhere the case. But what Lucas has today, he still has a small cerebral palsy on the right side, and he has an adult ROP. We all know ROP when the babies are born very small, very tiny, but it is in the meanwhile known that ROP can come again back when they are teenagers. And it's very important to have this kind of checkups, again, quality care, finding the right doctors, finding the right treatment. And he has every 8 weeks, he has a checkup. And already the last 2 years, he needed 3 times a laser. And nobody knew before. So in my whole community, even my neonatologists whom I'm working every day, they say, what do you mean with an adult ROP? And this is why we are talking about so many different things to really ensure that prematurity is not only a topic in this 4, 5, 6 months of the time in the NICU. It has a consequence for us parents and for the children, maybe not always a lifelong. And when you are proper prepared, when you have quality care, you really can ensure that the children have a good qualitative life and also a happy life.
Well, I personally am very grateful for you being that tiger mom, getting out there for your own child, because you've affected families across the world and founding this this wonderful organization. Tell us a little bit more about how that all started and how that came together and the impact it has today over many, many years later.
I'm very honest, it started really with anger. I was so angry in the very beginning that nobody has supported me and nobody was there. And so everyone is not helping me. That was at the end the start. So I really started very small with a self-help group in Munich and was 8 years the president of a German organization. But in this time frame, I was contacted from a young neonatologist and a father who lost triplets, or a couple lost triplets born preterm. And also at this time was no support provided. And we three went met together for a coffee and said, well, we want to change the situation for the world or even for Europe. It was really a dream. We had no financial support at this time, but we wanted to really change it. And also, I always said, for every animal, there is an awareness day, but there's no awareness there for prematurity. So at the end, on this day, on November 17, our one of the 3 partners, they got a baby, again, born premature, but healthy. And so we said at this time, it was the first parent meeting of the European organization, where we said, that is a sign, that's our day, that's a message of hope. It's a message of looking into the future. Of course, there are terrible stories maybe we all have suffered from, but we have to look in the future, and we have to make also a sign for others that there is space for improvement, but there's also space for sharing our stories. And so we founded the day, and this was 2008, and everyone looked at us and said, this crazy people want to found a day for World Prematurity Day. They were all just loving about us. Today, nobody loves anymore, but at this time, they were really loving about us.
I am loving about you now and then, I have to say about that. There's few things I take away from that. A little bit of anger can really fuel or a passion for your child, to change a system. It took 3 of you in a coffee shop to go, you know what? We need to do something. And look where you are now. This is incredible. I didn't know the origin story of November 17th. And that's very special to hear that from you. And I'm so happy that you shared that. And also that the inspiration for people who are watching right now. It takes one little step forward, or connecting with another peer, a peer parent, an advocate, a healthcare professional, and really brainstorming ideas to move forward. Because when people tell you you're crazy, usually you're onto something, is what I think. How about you?
Yes, definitely. So I heard in my life a lot of times that I'm crazy because I always had crazy ideas and wanted to improve things. And for me was really the wish of that other people who in the future get a premature baby or a sick baby, then not go through this hell what I had to experience of losing a baby and not getting support, or even as a pregnant woman not getting any information and not having the baby on the chest when you not feel even as a parent. And that was for me really important. And to see today, like World Prematurity Day, and also the campaign is translated in more than 40 languages, just imagine, and the whole world is celebrating. That makes us really happy, because now these children, who are the biggest child patient group in the world, and as you before said, that it is the biggest group of babies also who die every year, and they had no voice. The parents had no voice, and they were even not recognized. And also neonatologists and neonatal nurses, they were always called as like there would be a niche, and there are not a niche. I mean, there are thousands and even million babies every year born premature, minimum 13 million, and 1 million die because of not having the right access or quality care access for their treatment and care. And with this collaboration with us parents, with the healthcare professionals, governments, or celebrities, we can create noise, but we also can create standards. We can create better recommendations and guidelines. If we work together, then we can really make a lot of changes, and we should never give up. I always tell my parent organization, never give up, stand up, continue, be patient, and then you can make changes. And that is what I experienced the last 25 years. I do the job now in total, from starting the self-help organization here in Munich until today. And next year, 1st of April, EFCNI becomes GFCNI. And so therefore we become officially global, and hopefully we can then change a lot of things in countries where they even have not access, more or less, to nothing, so that we really can raise awareness and make changes in Africa and Southeast Asia, where babies are dying every single day because of not having access to the right care. And so when we work together, we parents, we healthcare professionals, then we can make a big difference for our tiny babies.
Well, I can hear the passion in your voice. And even after 25 years, I'd say you have your PhD in prematurity, is what you have, from 25 years of advocating, brainstorming, getting the word out. It's incredible. And I love that this new initiative will even bring that further. So congratulations to that. If there's anybody out there watching right now and you have some questions, please put them in the chat. We would love to hear your questions or comments about what we've been talking about so far. Tell us three, you talked about going into a coffee shop and being a little bit angry. Tell us three tangible things that you would say to anybody watching here today that they can do to move things forward in the world of Prematurity Day, to gain better access to quality care everywhere. What are three little things any parent at home could do, or anyone watching?
What really helps is also sharing stories. That means when you are at home and you have a preemie, or you have a family member who have a preemie, to really share the story. Sharing stories also of hope, because many parents are at the moment in the NICUs and are thinking about what will happen. And here may be my story that my son is 27 years old and doing his PhD soon. That is something what really helps, sharing stories and giving other people power. What really helps, and I like how you started to really donate. What is really important is to donate to your Canadian organization, or wherever you are in the world, or your national parent organization, because what it can do a lot of things, power and energy, motivation, what we have, but we need also money. If you really want to do something, and even every single dollar, every single euro, wherever you are in the world, will help to really make a big difference. And what really helps, and my anger really move to a motivation is you can be active. You can join, for example, when you have a walk or you have any kind of events, you can join this. It can be a cupcake baking event. You can bake cupcakes. You can maybe, when you are in the kindergarten or in the school, you can organize charity activities and talk about it. If you have network to politicians, to celebrities, to whatever, motivate them to join. And so this will help to spread the message. And everyone, every single person has a family, has neighbors, have people in the office. Talk about it, because this is 1 in 10 is born premature. That means in every single office, in every single school, in every single neighborhood, there is someone who has a preemie, is a preemie, or has family members or friends who are preemies. So it's a huge network, and talking about it would really help. And don't forget to donate.
I love everything about this. I love that concept that you're in a room with a dozen people, you know that somebody has a connection to prematurity. So start talking about it. Tell your stories, whether you write them, whether you post them, whether you do a little vignette, whether you go to your kid's school and talk about it. Tell those stories like you said. Just when you said about your son getting his PhD, it's making me a little bit wanting to cry right here, because I see the future. And I know when I was in the NICU, seeing pictures of kids who are older or hearing those stories was so important to me, to have that piece of hope, and also to propel me forward. So I love that. Donate, tell stories, and also if you can, just advocate in your little area of the world, because it's so important. Anything else you would like to share with us today?
Yes, for sure. Maybe what you also can do, when my son was 18 and made his A level, we visited on this day when he got the paper in his hand, we visited our NICU, and we went with this paper to the NICU and thanked the people. There were not many of the nurses still there from at this time, but the neonatologist was there, and really the leading nurse were there, and we were all crying and hugging each other. And this meant so much to this team. For every year on Luca's birthday, I have sent a card to the NICU. When he started school, we have this sugar box what we have in our hands when you start schooling. Then I have sent a picture of Luca starting school, and this is also something what you can do. It's a big motivation for the NICU teams. And when Lucas finalized his university degree, I also sent a card to the NICU and saying, look, Lucas is now finishing his master degree and starts soon his PhD. And it's so nice to see how the NICU colleagues are reacting. And this gives them also motivation, because they are doing every day a really hard job. And what parents should not forget, to say thank you for everything what they are doing every single day for our children. And that would be also something what I would recommend, because at the end of the day, we are all sitting in the same boat, and we are very grateful. And I guess everyone is grateful for what these people are doing every single day for our children. That would be maybe some tip for making not.
I love it. And that's a great tip, because motivating healthcare professionals is sometimes their jobs, shout out to all of you out there, their jobs, their vocation, their dedication, their time they put in, all of that, and seeing these families day in and day out, it's hard. And having that little piece of hope, or that little something to say, wow, I made a difference in this one life or many, many lives, is so important. So I love that you do those little things to go back and share, and just show the team that worked with your son that they made a huge difference in the world, because who knows what he's going to go on to do and change, and with his brilliant mind and his strong tiger mom. I love you very much, and your motivation. Thank you for all that you do in the world of prematurity. Thank you for, being with us here today, but also you work a lot with Fabiana here, who is our executive director. She is in Halifax today, everyone, celebrating there and working with families there. By the way, Halifax has their 10-year anniversary of their parent partner in the NICU this year. So that's another great way to support patients and families, by having somebody who has been through it in the NICU as well. Definitely. Right?
Yes. Happy anniversary.
Yeah, exactly. Happy anniversary, Halifax, to you in 10 years. I don't know what our time is at yet, Jenna. I'm just throwing that to you. But if there's anybody at home right now who has any questions for Silke, we would love to hear them. Otherwise, she's on a different time zone. What time is it there in Germany?
It's 6:30 in the evening.
So she's about to have her World Prematurity cupcakes and dinner. She's going to have them all weekend long. What are you doing to celebrate World Prematurity Day?
We have we are providing a lot of materials that everyone in the world can celebrate. We had yesterday the Twitter chat or X chat, how you say in the meanwhile, where we were talking a lot about prematurity and also about quality care. On Monday, we have here a local event in Munich where we are inviting press and media to the NICU and telling them about the importance of quality care and what does this mean for us parents, so not only medical care, but 24/7 access and having also rooming in for the parents, and that future hospitals, when the government is planning new hospitals, ensure that we have single or double rooms and not this open bay units anymore. So this is what we are doing here. And of course, we are supporting worldwide our parent organizations to have all the materials in all the languages they just want.
Amazing. And what are you going to be wearing? I hope it's something purple. Are you dyeing your hair purple, or what are you doing? You got to go big.
We will cook purple.
That's a great point. Cupcakes, beets, smoothies, anything you can. Get the word out there. Take a picture of it. Put it in the World Wide Web and tag you guys and the Premature Baby Foundation here and all around the world. We are so looking forward to the big day on a Sunday, but there's lots of celebrations leading up to it. So thank you again for spending your time with us today. I believe we're at time or close to it. Jenna, if you're there and you can hear me, I'm not good with technical things here.
How about I come and help you there?
You're the best. I could talk
yes.
for 6 hours.
Yes, I'm sure we would all love to listen to the two of you talk for hours, but we do have many more guests waiting to share some stories. So thank you, Silke, so much for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. And I'm going to let you go. And Jack, I'm going to let you have a little break, and I'm going to bring on our next guest.
Very excited.
Thank you for having me.
Danke.
And I removed the wrong person. I'm sorry there. Now it's me. We're going to give Jack a moment to rest and Silke to go on to her evening. And thank you both for kicking off our wonderful day today. We have a lot more to come. As Silke shared, the theme for this year's World Prematurity Day is access to quality care everywhere. And as she said, many parts of the world, basic access to prenatal and preemie care is needed. But in countries with more advanced care in place, the focus shifts to ensuring that care is of the highest quality. And that means making sure everyone's health is treated equally. And our next guest is an advocate for improved pregnancy care for women with chronic health conditions, a passion based on her personal experience participating in a clinical trial during her own pregnancy. Naomi Moss now co-chairs a global multidisciplinary commission named BRIDGE, Better Research, Information, and Data Generation for Empowerment, working to ensure women with chronic diseases are equipped to make shared decisions about their health and their treatment before, during, and after pregnancy. She's an honorary research fellow at Queen Mary University in London, co-founder of the Ellie Charity, and a multi-award winning researcher and advocate. Welcome to Preemie Chats, Naomi.
Hi, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm here in the UK and I've managed to second myself into a room, so hopefully I won't get kicked out, but lovely to be here today.
It's wonderful. It's so fantastic to have you join us. I gave just kind of a little hint of your story, and I know we don't want to take too much time, but if you could give us just a little bit more of a personal anecdote about what your experience has been with pregnancy and how that's influencing what you're doing now.
Sure. So I have epilepsy, so that's a chronic condition. I was diagnosed when I was very young, when I was 11. And when I went to have my child, all of a sudden, my epilepsy, which had been quite well controlled, things shift. So it's like quite a big change in your life, and that also includes your body and your health around that. So I was very lucky. I was on a clinical trial during pregnancy. I was invited to take part in research, and that's how I kind of got interested in all this whole space, based on my lived experience of being on a study, but also about learning about my own medication and my own chronic condition. And subsequently, so I'm not a doctor, but I've done a lot of research work. So after having had my second child, and I work a lot with other parents who have chronic conditions and also multiple health conditions, because often your condition might be twinned with something else. Often you find that you might have more than one chronic conditions. So that's a little bit of my journey to get here today.
I think it's really important that you brought up that idea of how often there are, kind of coexisting and conditions that interact with each other and then interact differently with pregnancy. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about just some of the challenges that women with chronic conditions might face that might not be so apparent, maybe even to themselves, let alone to those of us looking from the outside.
Sure, of course. So I think it depends very much on your chronic condition. So there is a spectrum of diseases, and everyone has a different experience as well, or severity within their condition. But I think from a starting point, it's important to remember that, approximately 1 in 5 women have a chronic condition during pregnancy when they get pregnant, and that often these is more than one. So it could be things like diabetes, for example, or high blood pressure. It could be asthma or an autoimmune condition. So there's quite a spectrum, and as women are starting to have families as they get older, you're more likely to have one of these conditions when you go into pregnancy. So I think there's a few really important things to consider here. I think if you do have a condition, it's really important to try and advocate for yourself. So Silke kind of alluded to this in her previous talk, but really particularly important to get care early on in your pregnancy, or at least to get a revision, get someone to check you over, have a visit, because your chronic condition can sometimes change during pregnancy. So it might get better or it might get worse. So it's important that you get a tailored, personalized sort of plan or approach for your journey. So getting some help early is really important. And if there's no sort of standard appointments in place, then do feel free to advocate and highlight to people, look, I have this condition, I really need to see someone, because that's also very important. Many people aren't aware that really sometimes your care needs to be personalized. You have things like, for example, you might need to change your medication. Some people should start taking medication, and others should maybe come off medication. Others might need to just adjust their dosage. And this can change at different points in your pregnancy. So it can be very early on or it can be later, but it's important to pull that up early to make sure that we can manage these risks, that you're a heightened risk proactively at an earlier point. It also might enable you to have sort of more tailored support, but also to tailor your plan during your pregnancy as well. And think about also the way your treatment options are presented to you as well. So I think this is something for parents, but also for health professionals. Often you're making decisions on your condition and how to manage it, but also on your medications that you're taking based on not really that much evidence. And it can be difficult for parents to make a decision on this, because you feel like, well, actually, I should be doing this or I shouldn't be doing that. We're all very, you want the best for your child. And one of the things we come up with a lot is, should I keep taking my medication? So that's why it's really important that people seek help early. and they don't necessarily just stop taking their medication. They need to get medical advice. And also, I think it's important for health professionals to frame the benefits of staying on treatments as well as the benefits of coming off treatment, so that women can try and make the best decisions for them and their family.
I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that personal struggle of trying to make those decisions, and the need for more healthcare providers and researchers and more families and more people to step up and take some of those, what might seem like risky behaviors, like you did, taking part in a clinical trial while pregnant. That doesn't sound like the safest option, and yet it's so important.
Yes, so on that, on the framing of the clinical trial, or maybe we'll touch on that later, but I think one thing that's really, important to recognize is that having a chronic condition adds like an additional complexity around your pregnancy. So everyone worries in pregnancy about something, but if you have one or more chronic conditions, there might be more things to worry about, and that can often cause a lot of stress and anxiety as well. So that's actually something to be mindful, to try and be kind to yourself, or for health professionals to just have it on their radar that it's another level of burden. And I think as well, so that whole mental health element is really important, and thinking about how to mitigate that, and whether women need support, maybe, or maybe not, but just to be kind as well in how we deal with people. I think that the stress also often comes around decision making. And that often includes around medications. So you kind of question, am I doing the right thing? You worry about the long-term impact of you taking or not taking the medications. So Silke was saying about having to live with the long-term repercussions, of having your baby in NICU and what that might mean. And in some ways, this is a step previous to that actually those decisions around what you do in pregnancy, you have to live with the consequences of that. So if everything goes fine, then great, but actually if everything doesn't go fine, then you're the one having to live with it and manage that for the rest of your life, and as a family, or maybe not as a family, so there's a lot of that's also like an additional kind of burden that you carry. And often there's not really a lot of evidence based for the medications as well. So for example, if we think back to the research, we know that around 70% of women in the US take some kind of prescription medication. And which is a lot, but of that prescription medication, only about 5% of medication is actually tested, labeled, or monitored during pregnancy and breastfeeding. So that's a stat in Europe, but it's like similar kind of settings. So really the numbers are huge, and in some ways that's why I wanted to take part in research, because when I was pregnant, because I was like, this information is not really out there for me. And I'm having to make this decision, and I don't know. And my health professional doesn't know either. They can't advise me. Or they'll advise me, but they might not really know. So that's why I wanted to take part in research, because I felt it was important to use my experience for something good and better, so that there's benefit for other women coming after me, and my daughter in the future potentially as well. So that's why I took part in it. But we also know that if you take part in clinical trials during pregnancy, that you actually have better outcomes. And you don't actually have, because I think it's because really you have to be so careful, and so diligent. And actually you get really good care, even if you're on placebo. So that's one component. But also, I was part of a clinical trial, but there's other types of research that you can take part in. So you might have things like, you can share your data with researchers, and that already would provide a lot of information. You can also be part of a registry. You can, have interviews with researchers and tell them about your experience. So there's a whole spectrum of different bits of research. And I think it's really important that both parents and health professionals understand that is, it can have a protective quality. You can be doing something for the greater good, and you should consider, it is an option to take part in research, and your health professionals shouldn't, often we're very scared because it seems like a very risky thing to do, but, you have to kind of balance the risks as well as the benefits. And really for health professionals, I would urge you to find out, are there any research studies going on for pregnant women? And is that something that you could bring up in conversation and put forward? You can always say no as a person being asked. So it's about, giving the opportunity and being open-minded to take part. And I know it's a long-term cultural shift, but I think it's something for us to really to think about and consider. And I think, going back as well, I'm switching a bit, but going back to your original question about, the specifics of chronic conditions and sort of the strain, I just wanted to kind of highlight the strain around that a little bit more, and thinking about the questions and questioning yourself is really, it's hard. It's a really difficult decisions that you're making, but your healthcare professionals there to help you. And if you are getting, regular appointments with them and monitoring, hopefully that will give you also a sense of reassurance along the way.
When I'm listening to you speak, I think of back when I was pregnant with our twins. We were flown to Toronto for surgery, and it was at a teaching hospital. And I was asked, would you mind if the students would come in and watch what's happening? I was throw the doors open, let anyone in you want, for exactly that reason of thinking of everyone who said yes before me made my experience better. And if I can do that little thing to help someone else, to help, the wealth of knowledge that's out there, so healthcare providers and researchers can make better informed decisions and share more information with us, then that's such a fantastic opportunity that we're given. And I'm wondering if you could just talk a little bit about, in your work that you've been doing and advocating for this kind of, increased representation and participation, what do you hear from people who step up and say yes and get involved?
Yes, so this whole part of the advocacy work around this has come because I'm now a co-chair of this commission that we mentioned before, Bridge, and this is around women with chronic conditions through their reproductive journey. And as part of pulling together, we've got a report that came out with practical recommendations for different stakeholder groups. And as part of that journey, we spoke to quite a lot of women in lots of different countries. And it was just amazing that there's lots of themes come up. So it doesn't matter what chronic condition it is. It doesn't matter how severe or not severe. Women have very similar questions in different places, even in different settings. And I think that's one thing I was kind of surprised, because when you advocate, you do things because of your experience and you want to help others as well. But when you hear other people with similar stories, and I think this goes back to what Silke was saying, hearing stories can also be really inspiring, and can also be, a feeling of, you can get there, or to help you get through that really difficult period. And make a positive change. So I think that was very interesting to me. I feel as well, we have power within our voices, and we need to use that power. And, that might be on a very small scale. It might be at your local hospital, and trying to change how care is provided for other people in your similar conditions. So one thing I've heard a lot from women, particularly women who have multiple health conditions, but not just multiple health conditions, is that often in the system it's quite fragmented. And I'm sure it's like this in lots of countries. So, for example, you go and see your obstetrician when you're pregnant about your pregnancy, and they consider your health condition to be different, and someone else manages that. That's not, I'm just here for your pregnancy. And then you might go and see your specialist, and they're thinking, oh, you're just here for your chronic condition. You're not here for your pregnancy. So there's often this very disconnect between different specialties that are treating you or might be treating you. And I think there's really an opportunity there, whether it's at, our local level, to try and integrate services, or maybe to have multidisciplinary groups in consultation, but at the very least for people to be aware that you're not just in a silo. So I think that's a really important component, and something hopefully people can take away from that as well. And there's also very much a stress around navigation. So as a parent, something I've heard a lot is around the pressure of having to navigate these systems. So you're constantly having to repeat your story over and over again. I've got this, I've got that, I take this, I take that. Yeah. But you're having to manage that care. So having some kind of support or navigation to help you navigate that can also be something that people have been asking a little bit for, that I've noticed. So there's, that trying to mitigate that constant burden of moving from one place to another and repetition. So I think that's maybe something to take with you, and that can be at all different scales and levels. It can also, if people want to advocate, at national or a regional policy, that could be something that could be cascaded, or even if it's at your own hospital. And I think often women that have had that integrated care feel like they've had a better experience. And the other thing I sort of wanted to mention on this is that often they feel more empowered as well, because they know what to ask for. So even when they're in childbirth, for example, they know what to ask for or what to expect. So even if they don't have the best childcare experience, we found that people that have had that sort of support, either multidisciplinary or with like a clear plan of what to expect and what questions to ask, had a better sort of experience during what might not be the best experience. I don't know if that makes sense.
Oh, I think it does, and I think we see that a lot in the preemie world, especially here in Canada and in hospitals where they follow FICARE, the family integrated care, and even if people don't know the answers, and even if you've had a very traumatic experience, when the people around you are treating you in a certain way, then it really does color the situation, and it makes it a much more hopeful situation than it might otherwise be. Is there any other thoughts you want to leave us with before we move on here today, Nawi?
No, not really. I mean, I really want to thank you for raising this, because, as you guys do, you feel very passionate about this. It's a really important part of your life and your journey, and you just want people to have a better experience. And I think this is so important, and thank you so much for having me on today.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone who is watching and following along with our special today. I know there's lots of you watching from all around the world. I'm thrilled that you're here with us. My name is Jenna Morton. I'm one of your co-hosts today for this World Prematurity Day special brought to you by the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation. Today, we are having several discussions around this theme of equitable healthcare during pregnancy, how that relates to better outcomes for preemies, for their families. And our next guest is also working in that space, working to ensure parents with disabilities are supported during pregnancy and into parenthood. Dr. Hilary Brown is an associate professor at the University of Toronto in the Department of Health and Society and the Dalla Lana School of Public Health. She holds a Tier 2 Canada Research Chair in Disability and Reproductive Health. Her work focuses on improving prenatal and in-hospital care for people with disabilities, and she joins us now. Welcome to Preemie Chats.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining our conversation today. I think it's going to be a beautiful, perfect flow from talking with Nawi to speaking with you about what's happening in this space, and talking about, parents with disabilities and the challenges they're facing and what we can all be doing to make that a little bit more equitable. So where would you like to start with that?
Sure. So I can give you a little bit of an overview of the research we've been doing and kind of connect it back to this issue of preterm birth. So over the last 7 or 8 years now, we've been conducting a large study across Canada looking at health outcomes and healthcare experiences among parents with disabilities using a combination of healthcare records data, so we have a sense of what's going on at a population level, and interviews as well, so that we understand people's healthcare experiences. And what we've discovered from that work is that about 1 in every 8 pregnancies are to a person with a physical, sensory, or developmental disability. And I think that's a really important statistic to kind of start with, because historically, I think there's been this assumption that pregnancy is not that common in people with disabilities. And so there hasn't been much work at a systems level to make sure that obstetric care is accessible from physical communication and other standpoint. And so in the work that we've done, we've really shown that disability is common in pregnancy. And we hear a lot from parents with disabilities about accessibility challenges that they faced when trying to access obstetric care, including care related to either risk of preterm birth or caring for a newborn who'd been born preterm.
And when you're looking at the data, what are we seeing really that are the shortfalls for parents in this space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we hear lots of stories about the healthcare system just not being set up with the needs of parents with disabilities in mind. So we hear a lot about the physical inaccessibility of obstetric care spaces and newborn care spaces as well. So if individuals are using mobility aids like wheelchairs or walkers, it can be very difficult to navigate labor and delivery rooms. We heard stories about parents with newborns in the NICU who had been born preterm, and they weren't able to visit their baby because they couldn't navigate their wheelchair into that space. So physical accessibility is definitely an important aspect. Communication related accessibility is also an issue. In Canada and in many other countries, it is a human right to have access to American Sign Language interpretation and other forms of accessible communication in healthcare spaces. But I think a lot of healthcare providers are not necessarily aware of that requirement. And so, unfortunately, we hear stories from parents about situations where ASL interpreters were not booked for parents who are deaf during really critical stages like labor and delivery, newborn care, and that sort of thing, which makes it difficult to communicate with providers and understand the medical advice that's been given. And then I think the last sort of barrier that we really hear a lot about is attitudinal barriers. So sometimes there can be a level of ableism or lack of knowledge among providers about disability that can lead to some assumptions and potentially even negative interactions with patients. So lots of examples of spaces where improvements can be made.
It just I get that feeling in my heart when you talk about, imagining being in such a stressful situation as giving birth and not feeling like you can communicate or that you understand what's happening around you is just, that's terrifying.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And then on the other hand, we also hear stories about when that is addressed and what a big difference that makes. So lots of the people that we talked to in our interviews, maybe I shouldn't say lots, but certainly some did say that when they had providers who went out of their way to ask them about their accessibility needs to set up those additional supports, they felt really comfortable and really supported, and that made all the difference to their pregnancy and birth experience. So I think similar to the last speaker, that sort of sense of feeling like a provider is there for you and is able to support you, it can make a really big difference with very kind of simple questions around accessibility that everyone should be asked. So certainly, although we heard negative stories, I think the positive stories about when that does happen show us the simple things that healthcare providers can do to make care more accessible.
I'm wondering if you could give maybe a few concrete examples of, best practices and things that you've seen that have been working that, if there are healthcare providers that are watching and listening now, might be able to say, oh, yeah, we could do that. That's not, building everything back from the ground up.
Yeah, absolutely. One quote that kind of comes to mind from a participant that we interviewed was she could tell as soon as she entered an obstetrician's office how friendly it would be to her disability just by the way that the waiting room was set up. So she could navigate her wheelchair through all the chairs in the waiting room. She sort of knew, okay, is this space meant for me or is it not meant for me? So simple things in the physical environment, thinking about accessibility in terms of that physical space, that's part of it. And certainly some of that is difficult in terms of if you need equipment that's more accessible, but those simple things like setting up the space in a way that's easy to navigate through, that can make a big difference. Another concrete example I can think of is simply asking people about their accessibility needs. In Ontario, where I work, we have the Ontario Perinatal Record, which is the standardized way of documenting people's perinatal care. And historically, that record hasn't included a lot of information on accessibility related needs. But if we have some sort of check mark that providers can be aware of that says for every patient that comes into my office, whether they have a visible disability or not, I'm just going to ask them a quick question about, do you have any accessibility related needs? Are there any supports I can set you up with to make your pregnancy care more accessible? Those sorts of questions can really reveal a lot, whether it's communication or other types of needs. And then I think beyond that, this is maybe more at the system level, but I do think we need more education for providers on disability during their own training. A lot of people were trained in an era where disability was seen as an outcome to prevent, as opposed to an equity-seeking population that would be accessing services like obstetric care services. And so I think that's certainly changing as we see more of a focus on equity and diversity in medical and other training. But in the meantime, there are resources out there that providers can refer to educate themselves about disability and pregnancy, including a recent clinical guideline that came out from SOGC on physical disability and pregnancy. So there are resources out there, and I think patients really appreciate when their providers do that little bit of extra reading so that they're aware of more of the unique and specialized care they may need to provide.
It makes such a difference, like you say, to ask that one simple question of, is there anything that I can do that will make this more accessible for you, that will make this an easier experience. And I think even, those of us in the preemie world who are dealing with our preemies growing up and going to school, we started to get used to pushing for that and not even necessarily waiting for the question, but having to speak up and say, can we do this, verbally rather than hand out a pamphlet, those kind of,
Exactly.
There's so many little things that can make such a big difference.
For sure. And I think another thing that comes to mind is flexibility. So we heard this a lot when the baby had been born, and let's say the baby's in the NICU and the parent is trying to breastfeed. Sometimes, especially if an individual has a physical disability, they might need to breastfeed in a way that might not be typical. So having nurses and lactation consultants who can kind of think outside the box and think about adaptive strategies, hands-on resources and that sort of thing that can be helpful for parents. We heard from parents that was extremely useful as well, as opposed to kind of putting everyone into the same box in terms of, no, this is how you breastfeed, this is how you should hold the baby. Thinking a little bit more flexibly and working with people to see what works for them. I think that's another simple and straightforward piece that can be really helpful.
We only have, a short time with each guest today. So I'm wondering, Dr. Brown, if there's any kind of thoughts you would like to leave us with for our discussion today.
Absolutely. I think maybe it's just to reiterate the need for more training related to disability in medical settings. I think a lot of the gaps that we see in care currently for people with disabilities could be addressed in the future by having a healthcare workforce that's had more resources and education related to disability. And certainly for parents with disabilities who are considering pregnancy or who have had a pregnancy recently, there are resources out there and parent support groups and parenting workshops and that sort of thing that can be very useful. So certainly being able to find that community and people with similar lived experience can be really helpful.
Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. And thank you everyone who's tuning in and listening. We have so much more to bring you coming up here in our second hour of our time together. And as we head into that, I'm going to invite Jack to join us back on the stage here in just one moment.
Hello.
I see you got the
See you
memo.
again. I'm sporting. I did because it's chilly in here. And so I said to myself, how can I make my life better? Well, I can wear a Canadian Premature Babies Foundation hat, the Pom Poms for Preemies toque, and cover my ears. Now, you can get one of these too, Jenna, and anyone out there who's watching, by donating $75 or more to canadianpreemies.org. Go to the website. And if you do it soon, you get one of these for the winter because you'll need it to cover your ears. It is very cozy. My daughter has one too. She wears it to school all the time. I'm enjoying the pom-pom on it. There's other ways you can donate as well to the foundation, but this is my special one, Pom-Poms for Preemies, because you get something a little special to keep you warm and remind you of the 1 in 10 babies born too soon. So if you're willing to donate, that would be wonderful. We would greatly appreciate it. Jenna, there's some great stuff going on in these conversations. I was loving the last few.
Yes, it's a fantastic afternoon. I love, the way we've been able to come up with a group of guests today that all kind of are working in a similar space in different areas, and it's such an important discussion to be had, whether we're talking about, prematurity or birthing in general and life in general. There's just so much hope and so many fantastic voices being shared here today.
100%. And I was really interested in some of the wonderful things that were being said. First, we'll go into Dr. Brown, if you don't mind. Asking questions, asking what people need, so important across the board for healthcare providers, also for patients and families, to get that conversation flowing, as you were talking about too, about later on in school and whatnot, we're the people who are, advocating for our kids. So getting into the habit of that, asking, having healthcare providers and people, clinicians asking as well. Everybody should be just asking each other questions. Open-ended questions. What do you need from me? How can I help you? Also, being flexible is a huge thing I keep hearing in everybody's talk. Not everybody does everything the same way, as we know with kids who are premature. My daughter doesn't do it the same as your kid, right? So how would we, maybe somebody breastfeeds differently than somebody else in the NICU if you have different things going on, and just giving options. Finding options, whether it's options for research. I was loving that there were so many ways that you can do research and give back, but they can be simple little things. I know I did family integrated care, and it was a huge impact on my experience in the NICU. But it can be any sort of research that feels good to you and you feel comfortable with. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. And like I said, when I was asked to open up the doors of a room where they were opening me up, I was like, yeah, sure, why not?
I was in high risk at Mount Sinai, and it was same teaching hospital. Yep. And so I was on 7 South. I don't know if it's still called that anymore. And I think everybody, come on in, see what we've got here, everyone. Let's learn together, shall we? Yes.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's really, the focus and the goal here is what can we all learn from each other? And I think that's going to be a very important discussion that we're going to have with our next guest. So I'm going to introduce our next guest and let you go enjoy your hat for a little bit, Jack, and we'll see you again in a bit.
So have fun with the next guest. I'm loving every minute of this. All of you who are listening at home, please put in some questions or comments, because we'd love to hear from you, and so would the guests. All right.
Yes.
See you on the flip side.
Well, yes, please take some moments to share your thoughts in the comments. Just let us know where you're watching from, the preemie in your life, what brings you to the discussion, or if you have questions for any of our guests, do please leave them in the comments. And our next guest is one that I am thrilled to introduce to you. Her name is Marian Erickson. She is a research manager at the University of Northern British Columbia's Health Arts Research Centre in Prince George. She's a DeKalb woman and a PhD student focused on revitalizing her culture's midwifery practice. Midwifery. I can't never say that name, that word, midwifery practice. I'm sorry. She's also focused on enhancing Indigenous-led learning opportunities for healthcare providers and actively addressing health inequalities in the North. Marian, welcome to Preemie Chats.
Hedi, hello.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us today and for bringing your voice to this conversation. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to share about your culture and your research.
Yes, me too. I'm really excited. I was also really excited to be listening to our previous presenters who were talking about the importance of sharing stories. And that really resonates with me when we advocate for preemies and parents and healthcare spaces. Thomas King says, the truth about stories is that's all we are.
That's such a beautiful quote. Oh, a wonderful spot to launch us into what you're going to share. I think you've got some slides prepared we're going to bring up on the screen, and I'll let you kind of go through those, and then I'll come back with some questions.
Okay, so I'll just start off by saying Hadit, Marian Erickson, Sahatni, Susan Erickson Leislu, Lawrence Paul, Yaxlat, and Leisbat, Masi Dasto, Nakazli Hasia. Hello, my name is Marian Erickson. My mother is a teacher and my father is an artist, and I just so happen to have become an artist that teaches. I'm from the Masiu Beaver clan of the Dakel Nation, which is located, here's a map. It is not an official map. This is a map of the Dakel territory, Dakel Kao. So I just wanted to go over quickly the objectives. So identified ways of redressing inequity, access to healthcare and information with Indigenous patients. Sorry, there's a little typo there. Establish relationships and engage in care planning in a culturally safe manner with Indigenous people, and reflect on the importance of culture and self-determination in healthcare interaction. I am going to glaze over this a bit, mostly because we don't have that much time, but I did want to share a story about Buscho. So a long time ago, there was, it wasn't actually that long ago because I was a kid. So there was a Buscho that was following around people, kids in the community. And there was a trapper who grew up in the bush by the name of Joe Bob Patrick. Joe Bob Patrick noticed that this cougar was stalking and hunting children, and so therefore he took a calculated action to prevent harm by killing this cougar, thereby ensuring the safety of not only the Indigenous children in the community of Fort St. James, but all children. And when we think about Buscho, I think it's important to also think about the impacts of racism in the healthcare system. There are things that we can do to take a calculated action to prevent harm. So Lee Jack Residential School has been the greatest harm that's impacted Dakish communities. And the residential school experience has had long-lasting impacts on perinatal health care, including increased preterm births in Dakish territory. So I'm going to give you this question, and we're going to come back to it. So according to Indigenous peoples, what is the greatest risk to Indigenous patients in the perinatal period? And you can guess in the comments, or you can just guess and keep it to yourself. But I will go over this in a little bit. But I thought I'd just go back and share a story. So in my fourth year of undergrad, I was doing a course with Dr. Neil Hanlon here at UNBC called Health Geography. And we were tasked to look up a health geography problem. And I had no idea what I was going to write about. I hadn't taken very many health sciences courses throughout my public admin and community development journey. But I was watching this BBC show called Call the Midwife, which follows this young woman in East London. I really love this show. And when we were watching this show, my mom said, she's like, I really like this show. And I was like, really? Because it's actually like nuns who help with the births as well. And I thought, and she was just like, my grandma was a midwife. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Who is a midwife? She's like, Grandma Monique. And I was like, she was a midwife. And then she told me that the very last birth that Grandma Monique assisted on was the birth of my eldest sister, Sherilyn, in the fall of 1989. That was the last DACA midwife assisted birth in our family. And I thought, what happened to all the midwives? And my mom said, you should, I don't know, you should find out. And I was like, well, what, do you know anything about the practice? And she said, you should find out. So I spent a lot of time learning. So the DACA, KALT, is the DACA word for midwife. And it translates to one who gives birth to something. Oral history of the DACA people includes a story of a woman who gives birth to puppies, and these puppies later become men and then become a popular formation in the cosmos, and it is what is more popularly known as the Big Dipper. DACA women gave birth to the stars that mark the sky, putting a woman's place in the community to that of the most sacred, the creation of parts of our universe. DACA women were believed to be so sacred, and the title given to a midwife is one that describes the sacred bond a midwife has in aiding women in the birth of everything, even the cosmos. I found out that more about my grandma's traditional midwifery practice. I found out that DACA midwives were perinatal health care providers. They provided physical, spiritual, and emotional aspects of birth. They had tremendous herbal medicinal knowledge, including various tinctures that would speed up birth, slow down birth, some would cause abortion, and other things like that. There was even plants that would help with hemorrhage. They provided cultural protocol for birth, and familial support. They were also in charge of rites of passage for menstruation and puberty. They taught sex ed, and they were cared for collectively by the community. One of my favorite stories about midwives is one of the things that they would do is if a birth was going way too long, they would tell the men that they needed to run, and they are not allowed to stop running until the baby's born. And I thought that was actually just such a great thing to do, because one of the problems that a lot of families have experienced is men who faint. And the act of running does a really great job of restoring blood flow to your head so you don't faint. So I thought that was quite clever. So I began my research for my master's thesis on this subject of revitalizing DACA midwifery. And I just wanted to ask, so what is the DACA Nation's perspective on working towards bringing back DACA midwifery practices? So I went to a potlatch and I asked my people, I said, should we bring this back? Is this something we're interested in, or are we happy with the way things are going with the Western healthcare system? And the answer was, let's bring back the midwives. And so what does the DACA Nation envision a DACA birthwork training program to consist of? So how can we train people? How can we bring this back? But we first have to think about what happened. Why don't we practice our midwifery? And the answer is, it was a combined effort by the Department of Indian Affairs, missionaries, and Western biomedical practitioners of mainly European descent. There was field matrons hired by the Department of Indian Affairs to replace DACA midwives. Genocide at Lee Jack Residential School was the greatest assault on DACA midwifery practice, one being that this was an apprenticeship kind of thing that would start around puberty and onwards, but DACA girls were in Lee Jack at the time they were 16, and they were often encouraged to be married as soon as they turned 18. And this went on for the entirety of the time that Lee Jack Residential School was in operation. The construction of the hospital and changed attitudes about Indigenous knowledge. These changed attitudes are a direct result of what happened at Lee Jack Residential School. And then there's the ongoing economic exclusion of Dacoit women. So Dacoit women, through systemic racism, are still excluded from becoming practicing healthcare providers. This is evident based on the In Plain Sight report that was released in the province of BC. So there are many accounts of Dacoit people that have been written down in the past, include racist ideologies. When learning about the unique cultural history of Indigenous people, you must know that the majority of our stories the majority of stories are still in the oral tradition. So there is currently an effort being put forth by the National Aboriginal Council of Midwives in many Indigenous nations to restore Indigenous midwifery in rural and remote Indigenous communities, as well as urban environments. There are trends of resurgence of Indigenous birth workers. Each year, more Indigenous babies are being born in Indigenous communities with the help of Indigenous birth workers. Various Indigenous doula training programs are popping up across Canada and all over the world. Many of these doula training programs are being offered in urban environments and are slowly being implemented in rural environments. So this is kind of what I'm working on right now. So we've identified the problem. We created a solution, which is the Dacoit doula training curriculum. And now we're working on the implementation and evaluation. The implementation and evaluation is what I'm focusing on in my master's, in my PhD dissertation. So how did we create it? I went to Binche and Yekuche, which are both Dacoit communities, and we hosted All Clans Gathering, which is part of our, so I introduced myself as Beaver Clan. There's other clans in the Dacoit Nation. In Yekuche and Binche, there's 3 other clans. So I went there, we had an All Clans Gathering, and we created a curriculum. I spent probably 2 hours in Binche and 2 hours in Yekuche, and we created this curriculum. It's tailored for the needs of a rural Indigenous community. It's based in community. It seeks to benefit our own people, and it increases safety. So one of the things that I like to express is that birth knowledge is really important, and not having
think we maybe have a bit of a technical issue. I think we may have frozen here for a moment. I'm just going to kind of hang out here on the side to see if Marion rejoins us. Not quite sure. First, I thought I was hoping it was my interconnection, but I think it might be hers. So hopefully she realizes that she is frozen and she's going to be able to rejoin us, because this is such an important topic and such a fantastic presentation. So I see that she's popped out there. So hopefully she's going to rejoin. So we're just going to wait a few moments and see if she's able to come back and join us to finish this presentation. One of the things that I think is so obvious today, we keep talking about the importance of telling stories and asking questions. And I love how such a simple question and story that happened while Marion and her mother were watching a show together has blossomed into such an important piece of research for her community, and I think Canada in general. I'm just going to ask Jack if she'll come back on here with me and chat for a moment while we're waiting to see if Marion can rejoin us. Hello, Jack.
What a fascinating and beautiful conversation you were having, and also learning those stories. My goodness. And how much did I love Run Until the Baby is Born?
I know, that was just, it's those little bits of wisdom that we really, in so many ways, have lost that. Just tell them to run, tell them to keep the blood pumping.
Yes, Marion, by the way, said she lost her connection. So hopefully she will be back. I'm not sure. I will send her a quick note, and you can tell me more about your thoughts about so far about midwifery. I'll help you with the word if you can talk
midwifery. I do have a terrible time with that word, but I also loved that show, and I'm going to see. I think we have Marion back now. We do. Marion, are you with us?
She looks frozen again, unless.
Oh dear.
Marion, if you can hear us, wow, your stories are beautiful, and I want to hear more of them. So hopefully you will unfreeze. I don't know if it's harder to show the show the slides, might be causing more issues with the technical part of it or not. But did you have exposure to a midwife when you were in?
No, definitely not personally. And New Brunswick in particular is very slow, even in the realm of Canada, when it comes to the practice of doulas and midwives. Although I was lucky enough to grow up in Cape Breton and to grow up in the Gaelic community there. And I do know some people who have reclaimed their role as midwives in that community, which has been just absolutely amazing to witness and to learn about. I think that Marion's connection is back again, so we're going to bring her on screen just without her slides to see how we do. Great. Marion.
Hi, sorry about
that. No, this is the world happens to us.
I'm dying for more stories and more information, so I'm going to pull off so that there's less bandwidth. I don't even know how that works, and you can continue. Wow, it's amazing, and thank you for sharing. Okay, get rid of me.
All right. I don't know if you want to try your slides again, Marion, or if you want to maybe just chat might be a bit easier for us to.
Yeah, I'll just wrap up my thoughts here. So I was discussing how we were working on implementing our doula training curriculum in Dakel's territory, and I'm really excited about it. I do know that one of the earlier things that I asked folks is, what is the greatest risk to for Indigenous people as far as birth goes? And the answer is, according to Indigenous women, the greatest risk to pregnancy is settler colonialism. A lot of Dakel's people have indicated that they have experienced racism in healthcare environments and are reluctant to see their provider, see their practitioner, and they're also heavily surveilled and are stereotyped as being bad mothers, bad parents in ICUs and in maternal healthcare environments. And that's a challenge that needs to be addressed. And it goes back to a culture of colonialism that resulted in the residential school system. But I do want to let people know, like, what happened in residential schools. So residential schools were missed opportunity to collaborate in a meaningful way. And so I just wanted to share, just to close up, a quote that discusses Dakel's people's vision. So our vision is to remember that we are taking care of our territory so that 7 generations will also live well. We are aware of the impacts of industry and other users of our land have had on the entire environment. Our elder, my grandma, Monique McKinnon, talked about putting holes in the sky long before scientists informed us of ozone depletion. We are aware of the impact of all logging and in turn devastation of the mountain pine beetle has on the supply of oxygen and water as far away as Africa. We do not think only for ourselves. We take our responsibility seriously for the health of the earth. The impacts on our territory will not only affect our children for 7 generations, but all children in all aspects of their lives, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Make no mistake, we care about our well-being. The health and well-being of DACA people is connected to the health and well-being of the land.
Beautiful statement. And I think it's so hopeful to think about what might change for those next 7 generations with the work that you're doing right now. So I'm very grateful that you're picking up, your grandmother's legacy and looking into what has almost been lost and thinking about what we might be able to have again.
Yes, and I'm really happy for the work that happens with the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation. I know that there is an increased incidence of preterm birth in Indigenous populations. So donations really help, especially help with families who are going through a lot. And with Indigenous identity, it is really challenging to be in a healthcare environment where I know a lot of Indigenous patients don't feel very welcome, don't feel very safe. So having that peer support is definitely helpful. So yeah, I do suggest people donate today. And yeah.
Thank you so much, and thank you for making do without technology always being on our side today. Thanks so much, Marion. And we're going to continue on and keeping in the same kind of thread and idea of talking about, accessing care in a equitable, inclusive way for everyone. Our next guest is someone who certainly focuses on that in her research. Dr. Tamara Lewis is well known for her work in advocating for increased diversity in healthcare, particularly in clinical research and education. Dr. Lewis is a physician scientist. She's the division head for clinical pharmacology and toxicology at SickKids in Toronto. She provides clinical care at the hospital's NICU, and she is collaborating on SickKids' Precision Child Health Initiative with the goal of bringing precision therapeutics to preemies. She's also a writer and speaker who often shares insights and hope on how we can make healthcare anti-racist. And I'm excited to bring Dr. Tamara Lewis to the stage today. Welcome to Preemie Chats. Hello, how are you doing? I can't hear you. Are you there, Dr. Lewis? Yes. I'm still not hearing you, Jack. Are you able to tell me, do you hear Dr. Lewis? No.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can. There we go. Perfect.
That.
Not at all. This is a very long afternoon with a lot of guests and a lot of technology. So we expect a few things to to take us a moment today.
Well, thank you for having me today. I'm happy to be a part of the program.
Well, thank you so much. I've had the opportunity to read some of your writing on this topic, and you're a lovely writer, and I'm really looking forward to you being able to share some of your thoughts today. And I'm wondering if we can start just kind of with that statement that, how do we make healthcare anti-racist, and talk about what that means on that deeper level, and not just the interpersonal relations people might first have in their minds.
Sure. So I am a neonatologist, and I've practiced in NICUs in different cities in the United States, and now here in Toronto, in Ontario. And for me, throughout my medical training and as a practicing physician, I see firsthand the ways that structures can really impact patient experience and patient outcomes. So we know from very well conducted literature that infants from racial minority groups have worse health outcomes, both within the NICU and after they leave the NICU. And this starts all the way with women from racial minority groups having increased rates of perinatal complications and increased rates of preterm birth. And so when I think about how do we improve public health and population health, I think about different types of inequities and different ways that society is structured, communities are structured, hospitals are structured, NICUs, every level, there are built-in structural disadvantages for certain community groups and certain patient populations. And so I like to think about and write about and teach about how we as a medical profession can face these hard realities of how structural racism, interpersonal racism affect our interactions in healthcare and affect our interactions with our patients, and how we can face these hard truths and work to improve them so that all families and babies can have good outcomes.
I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about how we do that and how we, start to make this change so that the weight isn't on the people who are in the moment looking for care.
Mm-hmm. It's a really important question, Jenna. I think the very first step is for clinicians in healthcare to have like deep cultural humility. And that means for us to walk into learning environments, for us to walk into clinical environments, fully acknowledging that people who are different from ourselves have very different lived experiences. And those lived experiences that people have outside of the walls of the hospital and outside of the walls of the clinic can affect their bandwidth and their capacity when they come into a NICU setting. But also as healthcare providers, our lived experience growing up and our internalized biases and unconscious biases can affect the way that we show up in the NICU and how we interact with families. And so in order to learn and grow and improve, we as healthcare providers have to have deep cultural humility to understand that some of us have extreme privilege due to our identities and our life outside of the hospital. Some of us have extreme underprivilege or disadvantage based on how we're perceived in society, based on who is expected to have agency, who's expected to have power. And all of these things interplay in the NICU in a very nuanced way. And one thing that I think is really important to change the system is that we have to admit to ourselves, both as hospital leaders and as NICU clinicians, that the trust and the communication that has to happen in the NICU, in order for it to go well, it's such a tenuous balance. It's so fragile, that trust and optimal communication. And my premise is that every family deserves optimal communication, and every family deserves cultural safety. And I will say that we have a long way to go to get to that ideal state.
I love the words you use to describe that, though, that everyone deserves cultural safety and everyone deserves to feel like they can trust the people that they're dealing with. And I think, we've been talking a lot today about just the importance of open, honest communication. And I think that's part of how we can start to build some of that trust. I'm wondering what you think, healthcare providers, whether they're coming into the field now or they're already in the field, what are some of the ways they can help cultivate that sense of humility that you're talking about and start to build that trust?
Sure. So one way is really sitting down with families of different backgrounds and asking for honest feedback about their experience in the NICU. And it may be because of my identity, but oftentimes when I have sat with families and asked for honest feedback about their experience in the NICU, racialized families or families from minority communities can have very different experiences than families from more privileged groups. And families will share stories about how they observe within the NICU how clinicians have different closeness with different families, or different relationships, or different modes of communication with different families. They'll share how they feel certain families are offered the opportunity to hold or do skin to skin more frequently, or how some families are encouraged to breastfeed in different ways than others. And so if we really create a safe space for families to share about their experience in the NICU, we as clinicians can learn a lot. And so, you know, I think sometimes families, while they're in the NICU, they're scared to bring these issues up. They're scared to bring up any worry about bias. They're scared to bring up any concerns they have in inequitable communication or inequitable care, because they can be fearful that they can be negatively viewed by the clinical team. But even if a family is scared to share these experiences while they're in the NICU, there are ways to create safe spaces to hear about their experiences after NICU discharge. And I think units can learn a lot if they create those safe spaces and allow families of different backgrounds, non-English speaking families, to really share about what they observed during their NICU stay and the things they wish that could have gone better. So here's a good example. Many NICUs have a patient experience survey that we send to families after the babies are discharged. But oftentimes we don't ask demographic questions within those surveys. So we cannot disaggregate, you know, did families from different backgrounds answer these questions differently? And also oftentimes we only offer the survey in English. And so we'll never hear the experiences of families that don't feel comfortable enough to read and respond to a survey in English. And so there are, there are things that we can do today to help us understand more of the variable experiences of different families.
Have you seen some examples you can share of, you know, NICUs that have changed their patterns and their approaches? You know, not that you necessarily need to name units or anything, but a sense of what clinicians and what healthcare providers felt like after they realized we can change how we're doing things for the better.
Sure. So I've been part of two NICU efforts to bring these issues to light and to discuss these issues in a multidisciplinary way so that NICUs can learn and grow and improve. And so one really impactful thing is to create a health equity journal club where social workers, NICU nurses, NICU doctors, respiratory therapists, dietitians, I mean, really multidisciplinary. We all get together and read a research article or a QI article about health equity. And it can be different aspects of health equity. It can be disparities in health outcomes by race. It can be variable quality of care by race. It can be the importance of optimal interpreter services for non-English speaking families. There's all different types of health equity articles that are about neonatal populations. And if a multidisciplinary team gets together in that format and reads an article together and discusses an article together, and importantly talks about how do you think these things might play out in our NICU here, and creates an opportunity for nurses and doctors and RTs to all share and have hard conversations about how these things might play out in your own local NICU, it can really open us to acknowledging that things can be done better. And also it can be really inspiring. And I've seen, 2 different NICUs do the brave work of reading this type of literature and then trying to discuss and acknowledge how these things might be happening in our own spaces.
We're just kind of scratching the surface of all these topics here today so that we all shine a little light on them and think a little bit more about them. So I'm wondering, knowing that we have to keep it short, what thoughts do you want people to leave with today from what you've had to share?
Thanks, Jenna. So for me, I think my biggest takeaway is we can't assume that all families in the NICU have an equitable experience. We cannot make that assumption. And we have to tailor our care to families who come from very varied levels of structural advantage and structural disadvantage. And we have to tailor our care so that every single family is met where they are. We have a trauma-informed approach and understand that different families come in with different levels of past and ongoing trauma. And that if we can spend time learning about this and practicing these types of approaches, we can improve the outcomes of the most at-risk preemies and the most at-risk infants in the NICU.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today. It fills my heart with so much hope to have these conversations and to think of the changes that are hopefully just on the horizon for so many.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Dr. Tamara Lewis is the Division Head Chief for Clinical Pharmacology and Toxicology at Sick Kids in Toronto.
Well, speaking of cute babies and the importance of taking care of everyone, those 2 youngins on the screen came from you.
They did. Yes, those were my 2 boys in that little vignette there we had there for a moment so I could catch my breath. Something that happens a lot with them.
I was going to say, how often do you get to catch your breath with twins and another child at home?
I just heard one of those former preemie NICU babies slam the door as he came in the house home from school. So,
for those who have younger ones, they grow up, they get smelly feet, they slam doors, they make a mess, and
they get taller than you, even though they start off as these teeny tiny. He was 2 pounds when he was in the NICU, and now he is taller than I am. So yes, there is so much that comes down the road if you're still in those early days.
So much to look forward to. Yes. Tess was the size of a pound or 2 pounds of butter, and now she uses that to make cookies in the kitchen and make a mess. And she's taller than I am.
Does she clean up the mess though yet?
Does not. If I look over now because I'm near it. Gee whiz. But that's, you know what? I'll cut her some slack because she had a rough go of it for 82 days. That was another fantastic conversation, by the way. So many takeaways from that. We're going to go on to the next conversation in a moment. But I love this. Be brave. Don't assume. Be brave. I love the Multidisciplinary Health Equity Journal Club. Fantastic.
Yes.
be brave, don't assume, and tailor your care for those clinicians who are listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Anybody who's listening right now, put them in the chat, ask some questions, or just give us some comments. What really resonated with you for the last two speakers, because they were fantastic, amazing. So I think we're gonna
move on, and you're going to introduce our final guest for the day.
Yay! Petra James is coming up. She is the mom of many, but also her last baby was, I believe, a 28-weeker, and Ray Star. And she is an amazing human being, because she is not only a mom of so many, but she's also a physiotherapist and a somatic coach. So we're going to talk about nurturing yourself, your family, and your extended family after a trauma like NICU related world. So please join us. Come into the room with me and say hello, will you? You're on mute. I can tell your little thingy is there. There it is. Are you in your office? Because it looks like there's something fancy that has to do with coaching.
Yes. I'm sitting in my office where I normally would see clients, but today I'm so happy to be part of this conversation.
Well, I am so happy you're here. We have so much to discuss.
Absolutely, we do. And there's been so much amazing shares up until this point. So thank you for putting that together and always kind of having something for people to tap into. I love this about this community.
It seems like it's flowing in a lovely direction right to you and to trauma-based help and care and safety. Before we go forward, did anything from the people before you stick out as something that you want to share or talk about before we get into all the wonderful things you do?
Yeah, I mean, I can really say a lot. All of it sticks out. I love the previous conversation around equity and being able to treat people in a safe, similar way, and the fact that it's not the case. We're a blended family, and I'm the one that looks like the privileged group, so we had a certain experience, but I can only imagine that it's not the same for certain communities. So I really appreciate that conversation a lot.
So let's talk further about feeling safe and feeling taken care of and nurtured. Tell us a bit about your background, what you do, and how that area of the world, that trauma-informed care, translates over into the preemie world.
Yeah. So usually I'm the strong one. I'm the strong friend. I'm the therapist. I'm the coach. And, the one who usually would know what to say. And I found myself in a situation where I needed all the support on that level. So my background is I guess I've been into this field of work for about 17, 18 years, and it started off as massage therapy, craniosacral work. And quickly I kind of started to realize that people coming in with pains and aches in the body were experiencing deeper reasons as to why that was presenting. So that was, symptomology, and the work that I had been trained up until that point to treat was symptom related. And I got really curious, so I went into further educating myself and became a psychotherapist as well. And from that moment on, things started to unfold where I just began to study trauma and how trauma is held in the body, what we do with that. And never in a million years would I have imagined that I would be a preemie parent. And I had been supporting women pre and post pregnancy for years, and witnessing how rich that plethora of birth experiences can be for different people. And all of a sudden I'm in preterm labor myself. And it was quite a moment. My daughter, her name is Raya Star. She was born at 28 weeks, completely by surprise. To this day, we don't exactly know what caused that. But just like that, my life changed. And I made it my full-time job to be there at the NICU. I definitely quickly became one of her team, one of her health team. But the nurses called me mom, which I'll never forget that experience of the nurses calling me mom and me being one of the people there every single day, understanding what they're doing because of maybe my background and training at that point. I really wanted the medical terminology. I wanted them to speak to me like they would, not to dumb things down. That was my request, and I wanted to be present to all the conversations. And it was definitely a traumatic time. And we, at that point, were a family of 5 now. I had 2 other girls at home, and we had to tap into some really deep grace and faith and presence and trust. And I feel like it definitely now, and it's only been 2.5 years for us at this point. She's 2.5. And I feel like it definitely strengthened their bond. We knew we needed each other to be there and to support each other and to move through that. And of course, most importantly, the baby definitely needed us all to help her out. And if anything, I know that I'm good at, and even at the time, I knew I was already good at knowing how to regulate my own system. I had been a therapist up until then for 15 years, and it was the work that I had done and studied and learned, and all of a sudden I had to be the one to receive that. I had to put myself in a receiving of this support, and that's when I knew I had to reach out for support. And this is how I got connected with the Premature Babies Foundation, that I will always be grateful for, because I knew that I needed the support. It wasn't just one day, we're going to deal with this, we're going to go back and process what happened. I knew that we needed to do this as this was happening. And also, the reason why the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation really sort of stepped in, and that's where I found the support and I leaned into the community, was because I knew that there was experience here, people who have walked the path. So it wasn't just, I need some support. I needed a specific type of support, and I found it here, which is brilliant and amazing, and I'm so grateful forever.
So you touched on so many great things in there. First of all, I think I said physiotherapist and not a psychotherapist before, just correcting myself, just so you know. You're brilliant and smart, and you can do everything. Maybe you're a physiotherapist too, who knows? Anyway,
I probably am, actually.
I know. I think you have all those credentials. But what you said was really interesting. You had been giving to other people, and to ask for help and receive is a very hard thing to do when you are a person who normally, as you said at the beginning, gives support to your friends, to your clients, to whomever. So what would you say to people who are listening today at every stage of this, whether they're out of the NICU, in the NICU, on bed rest, 20 years out? What are some of the things, as a somatic therapist and trauma-informed person, would you do to nurture yourself, or would you say or do to someone else?
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a question that can unfold in so many directions and ways, because, well, first of all, what I'll say is something about the word trauma, which sometimes when we hear trauma, we think of big things like
a car crash,
premature birth, car crash, and life experiences and different things that are quite big. And yes, and also I want people to think and understand trauma as not necessarily the event, but what happens. And this is the work of Dr. Gabor Mate, who is well renowned in the trauma field. He says, it's not the event that happens, it is what we do with the experience, how we internalize this experience. And if there's nobody available, accessible, or able to help us process this trauma or this event or whatever that could be, it gets stored. It doesn't go anywhere. Emotions are all in the body. And to anyone moving through prematurity or premature birth or going through the experience now, or even has gone through the experience years ago and are listening now, the body knows a lot of information that the mind cannot comprehend, that we cannot explain with our thoughts, but we know in our bodies. And so to begin to access that, the very first thing we've got to be able to do is create safety. I believe Dr. Lewis talked about this in a different way, but creating safety to have this conversation, creating safety to be able to experience what's happening internally. And it's not enough to say to someone, you're safe. Now it's okay to do this. It's an experience that we have to have on a nervous system level. And if you have been running on overflow and not in a good way overflow, but like in overwhelm type of way, your nervous system actually doesn't feel safe. It's not quite there yet. And so to begin to do this work, it might feel like more overwhelmed. So there is a way, and somatic just means we're approaching everything on a body level. We're approaching all of the healing and the understanding from the level of the body. And that's what I coach people through now. So nurturing myself and having that experience really actually taught me this lesson. I thought I knew it, but I didn't. And I think I know it now. I probably don't.
We don't know what we don't know.
Absolutely.
Can you expand on that a little bit? What do you feel you needed most?
Yeah, I needed because, and perhaps knowing what I know sometimes helps, but sometimes it might be a crutch. But what I knew I needed was I needed to ask specifically for help to process the experience of giving birth too early and what that meant for my baby and what that meant for me. And what I learned was to ask really good questions. And what I became was a really, really, really solid advocate for myself and for my baby in NICU, but also for the rest of my family. Like, for example, the girls weren't allowed to come and visit their sister. It was right after COVID, a bunch of restrictions. And one of the things was the youngest you could be was 5. And our younger daughter was 4.5. And I had to question that. But why is it that it's 5? Because actually this will really help us process this trauma. This little child knows she has a sister in the hospital and she wants to see her and she has a lot of questions and she's very curious. And if she can never have the experience of coming to visit this place, how can we process this eventually, right? So I had to advocate for that and ask, why 5? Can we make it 4.5 for this specific time? Or is there room to have our family connect in here so that we can move through this together? Because to me, that was really important too.
And that's what goes back to some of the conversations earlier in the broadcast today about being flexible and meeting families where they're at and being aware that not all the rules will apply perfectly to every single situation or family. So tell me more about the impact. I had an older child who, when my daughter was born, and he was 15 at the time. Tell me more about the impact of your extended family and your older children.
Mm-hmm. So we are a blended family. Our oldest girl, my stepdaughter, is 20 years old. So she's older than the little ones. And then Maya was 4.5. She's going to be 7 in December. And so there's always little nuances to anything. But I always think back and I'm like, our oldest daughter moved into our household just before COVID. She was living with her mom, moved in with our side of the family. And had she not moved at that time, I honestly don't know what we would have done, because she stayed with her sister while I was in the hospital day and night, and while my husband had to work, because somebody had to keep doing that. and that worked out. Now, the effects of we're still obviously unraveling that. So we're still moving through it as it goes. But one of the things that I knew I needed to be there for my daughter was to help her process this experience, to answer all her questions and as honest as I could. And something I remember saying to her, and I also wrote all the questions she has. So I have a little notebook of all of her good questions.
Amazing idea. What a fantastic
Yeah.
idea and a
And
resource.
I feel like, honestly, this would be a children's book at some point, like when I have the time to focus on it, because they were fantastic questions. Like, Mommy, why does my baby have to live in the hospital? Why can't she come home to us? Did I have to live in the hospital when I was a baby? Why aren't you here at night sometimes? Why aren't you here in the morning sometimes? And so I knew that she was experiencing this in her own way. And for me to be able to help her, I said, listen, those are really good questions. Sometimes I actually don't have the answer, but I will try to answer as much as I can. And you're allowed to ask me any question as many times as you need to. So I knew I was welcoming that curiosity and just the need to make some kind of sense at her little age. Of what was happening without saying, oh, no, nothing, it's never mind, all is good. Like, I didn't want to do that either.
I'm hearing being flexible, being curious, really being in touch with the people around you and listening. Listening is a huge piece, whether you're listening with your ears or listening with your body about what's happening around you. Can you talk a little bit more about, long-term impact and what you gained from having peer support now at this stage of your preemie journey, back then, all of it, having that impact and that support, but also, what was the impact for you?
It was huge in a sense that, like I said, somebody who has taken care of people my entire life, really, and working career, I knew the importance of taking that time to care for myself. And at the same time, it wasn't about, let's go get a massage or let's go get my nails done, which didn't happen for like years at that stage. It was the self-care piece of tuning into my own emotional moments. And I connected through this community with an amazing therapist. And that's why I think the work that you're doing with this organization and just the fact that people get to support other people through donating and through supporting this foundation to help other people like myself. And I know that I'm not the only one. And I know that some people won't even reach for help, but the impact has been, I don't know, not to be dramatic, but like life and death. Like, I was not going to be okay if I didn't have the support that I needed. Right? I was not going to be okay. And I knew that I didn't want to wait until one day. I was like, today's that one day. And can I do a little shout out?
Yes.
My friend and amazing pediatric osteopaths at Footprints is who mentioned Fabiana's name to me. And that's how it all kind of started to unfold. I came into the group. I saw that there was resources. I'm like, I'm going to take advantage of this. No shame. Yeah. I'm signing up for this. I'm going to find somebody. I talked to somebody initially. It wasn't the right fit. I was very honest. The only reason why I wasn't the right fit is they were not a preemie parent. Fantastic, great therapist, but not a preemie parent. And I said, I need someone who's been through this. And I got connected with somebody else who was a wonderful person. They helped me a lot just to be able to have that space and to create that safety and to be able to identify what was going on for me. So impact has been immense so that I can show up for my people.
Exactly. So you have the support and the kindness and the grace around you so you can show up for others, but also just to nurture yourself. I know for me, Kate Robson, who is amazing.
Who is the person, the person Kate. I was trying to remember her last name.
just calling in right now, Kate Robson.
Yes.
Kate is fantastic, and she was my person when I was in the NICU. And I've been able to watch the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation grow over the last 13 years since my daughter was in it. I was in FI Care. I got the benefit of Kate, but also watching her from the outside counsel and be there for other preemie parents within this program has been amazing, at no cost to the families. So things like that to support patients and families by people who actually know and have been through it, and who have the background and the knowledge and to help people is essential. So for me, that was a huge piece, and I'm glad it's the same person. She's only one person, but she's omnipotent.
She's wonderful. Yes. Never grateful for her.
Yes. And that's also the benefit of the foundation is the buddy system here, that you can log on to the groups, you can be on the website, you can get videos and information, just because there's so many stages to this journey. Jenna and I were talking earlier about, stinky feet stage and teenagers and advocating in school and education and things at that stage, but everybody's at a different stage. And then hearing about Silke at the beginning, and she is a 20-something year old PhD student child. So having this experience, this shared lived experience that somebody was mentioning earlier too, is crucial. So tell me anything you feel like, any tangible thing that you could give us, anybody listening, or they could pass it along to somebody going through this, that they can do. Is there a breathing? Is there meditation? Is there, I don't know, make me calm first. And then, is there something we could do together right now?
There is. Okay. So I just want to mention this because it just popped to mind as you were speaking. And since this lived experience, and since I've been back with my clients and seeing clients and coaching, and I'm in just, what's the word? Like, my mind is blown by how many people have actually had somehow been touched by prematurity, by premature birth.
There you go. So,
and I feel like even, I don't know, more than that now that I'm like, just this week alone, I have had at least 3 conversations with clients. One was just recently, she had triplets at 28 weeks. And sometimes it comes up because I share that. I share my experience, and it comes up, and it's like, a piece of connection. And then all of a sudden you can kind of sink into it and feel a little bit safer to have had that experience and to connect with someone else.
Well, I have to say, this whole day has all been about telling stories and sharing and being brave enough to speak. I was on the street with my daughter, and a person, we were playing with this person's dog, and they had a baby stroller, and my daughter looked in and said, "Oh, she looks like a preemie." And the like, cause she was so tiny, and she said, I said, she shouldn't have said that. And the woman started talking, and she started talking about her experience. And my daughter started talking to her about how she was born prematurely. And I started talking, "How are you doing, Mom?" And then we had this whole conversation on the street as we were trying to cross the street. So you never know what impact you have by reaching out and telling your stories and sharing, right?
Absolutely. So good. So
before we go, though, I don't want to, we only have a few minutes left, but can you do some exercise that we could all do together right now?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Absolutely. So so just get comfortable there. This is going to take maybe 3 to 4 minutes. And I'm just going to lead you through a little breath and body scan, and begin with that. Before I do that, though, I just want to point out, if anything out of this conversation and what I have to say, if you, anyone listening and yourself, can begin to see yourself as a top priority in your nurturance, that would go a long way, because we're so used to putting everyone, especially our kids, above ourselves. And I'm trying to flip that script, go all the way upside down. And if you're not at the very top of your own priority list, no one else gets to benefit from you, and you get exhausted and burnt out. And I don't want that for anyone, because it does not look good.
Does not look good on any of us. Put on that oxygen mask. Okay, I'm ready. Let's do this.
So let's go ahead and begin with the breath. So I'm just going to invite you to take a big breath into your body. Doesn't matter how you take it, just take it, the big breath. And exhale. And maybe do that 3 times. See if your feet can be on the floor if you're doing this sitting down.
I'll be honest, I have short legs and they're dangling, but keep
That's
going.
okay. So just sitting comfortable and feeling something supporting you, perhaps the chair that you're sitting on,
Okay.
just feeling some support underneath you. And breathing nice and deep. I like to close my eyes. You can gaze or just kind of keep them open or closed, up to you. And just taking a breath in, quickly noticing your shoulders right away and giving them a drop down. Also quickly noticing your belly, your abdomen, and giving it an expansion. Don't squeeze it, let it go. I know it's not flattering, blah, blah, just let it go.
No one can see it. Jenna, by the way, why don't you come on screen with us and do this if you feel comfortable. Okay, my belly's out. Keep going. I love it.
And just giving yourself, now quieting the chatter in the mind, but actually feeling in your body for the next 2 minutes. And you're going to begin by feeling your feet that are dangling, for example, or hitting the floor, whatever your situation is, feeling your feet and ankles. Imagine as if your awareness can be, your mind is your awareness. So pulling that awareness a little bit higher towards your knees and just noticing your knee joints. And now breathing in and pulling that awareness into your hips and pelvic area. And for women, and especially moms, here's where we spend a lot of time. I actually spend a lot of time working with women in this area, this hip, lower abdomen, digestive system, reproductive area, our womb space where we've made children and birthed them and carried them and all kinds of things that have happened. This is where a lot of the emotions live in your body. And just recognizing how this is feeling right now. For the moment, you don't have to do anything about it. You just want to give it a little bit of a, I see you. This feels like pain. This feels like tightness, whatever it is. Don't figure it out now, but just see it. Just acknowledge it. This is what it is. It's there now. And then bringing that awareness a little bit higher into the rib cage. Now feeling your chest and your heart, your upper back and the shoulders. Now, this is the area of the body that carries responsibility. So all the people, all the things you carry for, this is where it's all at. Again, you're not figuring it out today, but you're just noticing and acknowledging that. And then pulling that awareness a little bit into the head and jaw. Now, that is also part of the body that will just have so much tightness. We brace here. The jaw is the strongest joint in the entire body, believe it or not. And we clench and we squeeze and we hold and we tighten. And so just give it a little bit of a breath and let it relax. A little tip is to put your tongue to the roof of your mouth.
Oh.
And just let it drop, because you can't possibly clench at the same time. I mean, you could, but it's harder. And so just kind of letting that relax and feeling the very top of your head now, and just see this sensation of relaxation going all the way down like a little fountain, just kind of coming on, dropping the body. And this is a simple way to begin to create some safety within the body. It's not going to happen right away for everybody. And sometimes it feels a little bit harder to do than relaxing, but this is the way to start to enter the body field, the soma, the body, the somatics. That's where all the information is when it comes to emotions. Our minds are trained. We can tell stories. We can repeat stories. We can analyze them. They're trained, but the body knows the truth. And so when we can begin to identify pains and aches, symptoms, things that are there, we can then essentially get to the emotional root of what's there. And it's, often it's same things. We all go through the same emotions for different reasons at different times, but it's, the fear and the shame and the guilt and the whatever, the worry, and all of that is right in there. And so your body's storing all that on some level until it has the space. It's like a child, until you give enough opportunity for that connection to happen and for your own light to be shown on you, right? Not outward. internally. And so
That's going to make me cry, my friend. I'm getting all emotional about this, but in a good way.
Yeah,
Say
it has been
us.
it has been such a journey, and I'm so committed to this work, because had I just even slightly different, if things would have happened slightly differently, I may not be here in my own journey. And I'm just so committed to this, because I know every single woman, not to mention every single mother, needs this kind of support. So
well, we need you, and we appreciate you, and we really appreciate everything you spoke of today, and being so open and honest with us. We will all hopefully continue to do this work and work more on ourselves, breathing and finding grace, and knowing that there are supports out there. And what I learned from you is it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to be curious, and it's also okay to push the boundaries and ask, why not? There you go.
Jenna, not only is it okay, I feel like it's necessary. Let's go do that.
Let's do it. Let's all do this together. All of us listening together. Be strong, be curious, and be brave. We appreciate you being here with us today. We're going to say goodbye to you now and just wrap up the whole day. I hope you're going to wear purple and get out there and make some cupcakes and do some fun things this weekend. Thank you for sharing your time with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Amazing. Wow.
Oh, the absolute perfect way to wrap up these 2 hours that we have spent together this afternoon. I absolutely love it. My shoulders, they were, yeah. there's a lot sitting around here right now.
I have a little bit of weepy going on, so don't judge me.
No, not at all. That's what today is all about, is amplifying voices, letting people know whatever part of their journey they're on, they're not alone. People, there's no one else out there who's had exactly the same journey as you, but there's a lot of us out there who have had similar journeys that are happy to spend time and to share and to listen and to help, make that pathway maybe just a little bit easier for the next person that has to navigate it.
We learned so much today. Wow. We'd like to thank all of our guests for all of their input. This is taped, so people can watch it again. Is that correct, Jenna? Because you are the technical wizard.
Yes. Once we finish up the live version here, this whole recording will exist on the YouTube channel, on Facebook. If you go to the CanadianPreemies.org website, you'll be able to find links to it all there. And yes, a huge thanks to Silke, to Naue, to Hillary, to Marion, to Tamara, to Petja, and to Isabel, who was supposed to join us today and had something come up that she couldn't make it with us. So we thank her as well for having scheduled some time to be with us today. It's been just absolutely uplifting and fantastic, the conversations that we've been having here.
We are so grateful also to AstraZeneca and to Medela. Do you say Medela or Medela? I don't know. Let's call the whole thing on. I don't have my pump anymore, but I wish I did.
I feel like you're about to do like pumping actions.
Pumping and my backpack. I went everywhere with it forever, and I didn't want to give it up, but I gave it to someone. Anyway, thank you both of those companies. Thank you, the Canadian Premature Babies Foundation, and all the people backstage, if you will, who put all of this together and do all the hard work that you don't see out here. Thank you to all of you. If you'd like to donate or have more information about the hats or about the preemie events that are coming up over the weekend, please go to CanadianPreemies.org. That's correct, isn't it?
That is correct. Yes, that is the address. CanadianPreemies.org. You will find all kinds of things there. You'll also find all kinds of resources. Petja was talking about, getting connected with the foundation and realizing just the wealth of things that were out there. And so if you want information for yourself or to share with someone about the resources that are available, about counseling services that are available, wonderful pamphlets and handouts and, things, those tough conversations that preemie parents sometimes have to have, especially this time of year, saying why you don't want someone to come and cuddle your baby or kiss your baby this time of year, maybe you will find, resources on the website that will help you out. And I'm going to put the plug in right now. You'll also want to tune in to next week's Preemie Chat. The regular Preemie Chats, Friday afternoons, 1:00 Eastern time. And next week is going to be really special with the launch of Preemie Hub, which is something that is really going to help with a lot of what we've been talking about, how to make resources more accessible for a lot of families. So I hope that people will be able to tune in. And again, if you can't catch it live, you can always watch the replay. And Jack, thank you so much for being my co-pilot here today. This has been just fantastic.
A pleasure. It was such a pleasure to be here and learn more and be back in this preemie world again. Sometimes I'm out of it with an older kid. So thanks for welcoming me back. I can't even speak because I'm so overwhelmed from that nice calmness. The one thing I will say is going back to the beginning of Silka's wonderful talk. It can take 3 angry preemie parents to change the world. And she did by starting this whole World Prematurity Day celebration. So please go out and celebrate it and get a little bit angry, because it'll motivate you at home to do some great work to help 1 in 10 babies who are coming into this world too soon. Thank you so much, Jenna. You get the last word.
Oh, all I have to say is thank you, to the guests, to the sponsors, and most importantly, thank you to all of the people who've been following along with us today. There's so many of you that I can see have been here since we went live all the way through now. It's 2.5 hours we've been on the air, and that means so much to us and to our guests. And yes, I hope everyone has a very purple day on Sunday.
I'm going to go outside in my preemie hat. Go get one right now.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Have a nice day. Happy World Prematurity Day.